If I was you, I'd be asking for a refund. Everything they do for D.O.C, they need to defund. Lazy guards, double cells, everything in here is hell. You ever been to the county jail praying that you get some mail? Then you hit receive and all the stories, can't believe them. I thank God that I'm alive, I thank God that I'm still breathing. After COVID, wearing masks, everyone's sad. How did a virus know a budget? It really makes me laugh. We had good times, bad times, but still it made us strong. It was hard to be accountable, I had to right my wrongs. But now I'm long and forgotten, they forgot about me.
Welcome to another compelling episode of the Defund D.O.C podcast. Your number one premium community to hear true prison stories, conniving prison politics, and radical prison reform solutions that will end recidivist crime in America once and for all. Please welcome our hosts, Linda Thompson and Daniel J. Sims, as they delve into another hard-hitting and thought-provoking episode.
Welcome to the Defund D.O.C podcast. I'm Linda, and with me is my co-host Daniel J. Sims, along with special guest Melissa Eberling from A Warrior Within Us project. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Hey, man, how you doing? It is. How are you?
Oh, great. Just hearing a little bit about your guys' struggle for civil rights and human dignity. So we're really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys, even platforming it because talking about it is exactly where it starts. Because even though we're so excited about the news attention that we've gotten, all the way up to the New York Times, indisputable, but at the end of the day, people go on with their lives, right? And unless they're like really, really shook. So we just got to keep it alive, keep the awareness and the story. There is some big stuff still happening towards it, but we just got to keep elevating awareness. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with all the violations that we have nationwide. Absolutely.
Yeah. The reason why defund D.O.C is, so important for this time right now is because a lot of people are waking up to what's happening. It's just remarkable that it's lasted this long. Honestly,
it's an epidemic and a crisis all the way around. The school to prison pipeline, which and we can talk about that whole thing a whole other time because that's definitely a whole other show. And just to intro. I'm a Warrior Within Us and Virginia Justice Alliance. I want to make sure that people hear the organizations that are leading and advocating and working with the Black Caucus too, because we want to support everybody and we want everybody to support us. You know what I'm saying? And if you get calls to action, we want you to be able to count on Virginia to help elevate that voice. We would love for people to come on the Virginia D.O.C. They've made a public release about the Red Onion Supermax, in Virginia, and there's also a sister, Wallens Ridge, that has very almost identical complaints and concerns. But Red Onion opened up in '99, and it's in the mountains in Southwest Virginia. And, the same Southwest Virginia where, we introduced retributive justice. We stole land illegally in the corrupt cabinet, or not, he wasn't cabinet, but Judge Underwood. And that same Underwood last name is still out there and still involved in corruption and conflict of interest, and that's our Southwest Virginia. It's our patriots, our MAGA, people who don't get social justice because many of them are original founding families, and they're, the D.O.C. CEOs, they're like buddies, they go fishing and hunting together. I want to urge everybody, there's a video on YouTube. We had the public meeting put on by the Virginia Defenders yesterday in Richmond, Virginia. And there's a video that was played, and it's on YouTube. It's been there for a couple years now, but it's called Up on the Ridge. And it goes on about the creation of Red Onion Supermax, and then it goes to tell about some unaliving that has taken place.
Wow.
And I just got chills thinking about it. And it's heartbreaking, and it's very eye-opening. And it also shows those that were charged with, running this operation at Red Onion. It shows their blatant disregard, and they're joking about, you just don't joke about a prison. It's darkness a lot of the time, and that's for the people inside and the ripple effects to the family outside. But there's been human rights violations since the very first year they opened up. And they've run from, maggots in the food, way extended solitary confinement, lack of medical care, lack of mental health care. And I think that's across the board nationwide. But it's been very critical. It's been, human rights activists have been on this prison, this specific facility, since it opened.
When did it open?
So it opened up, it was 98 or 99, and then
Okay.
Wallens Ridge, the sister, was within that year after. So one was one was the other. And literally every year since then, there has been human rights violations, ADA violations, which is why I think people need to think about the school to prison type.
Let's pause on that for 5 seconds. You're saying that there's 88 documented human rights violation at Red Onion right now?
Oh, I didn't say a number, but I'd probably guess that it's well over that.
Wow.
Well over
that is. Oh, okay. I thought I heard you say a number, but man, that is outrageous. And can I ask you, from your standpoint as an activist and human rights defender, does it give you any kind of I don't even know what the right word is, resentment, or any kind of just a feeling of disgust that these real big human rights organizations, like, for instance, Amnesty International and whatnot, how come they're not, or the United Nations, how come they're not standing up for the systemic slavery, the systemic exploitation, the systemic solitary confinement, all these real genuine human rights atrocities, and yet none of them are engaged, not one of them.
Well, and the thing is, some of them do. Like Amnesty International has done some piece on Red Onion in the past. We've had litigation cases, civil right violations and human right violations in court. There's been awarded. There was I think it was over $1 million they awarded for one man who was kept in solitary confinement so long he came out speaking in numbers and barking like a dog. And that right there, that's what we need to think about, right? Because what they say about, I just want to explain to anybody who doesn't understand solitary confinement. Mandela Law, which is with the United Nations, says it is considered psychological torture to keep a human being in solitary confinement for more than 14 days. Mm-hmm. And
100%.
They've done studies now, and solitary confinement, it was invented in Pennsylvania, and at one point it had a skylight, so God was watching, was their story, the radical Christianity, and now you don't even get a skylight, and sometimes people are stripped of their communications. They're fed air trays, empty trays of food. There has been stories of COs going in and assaulting people, going in and spraying chemicals or perfumes, and not airing out. I mean, it is just any kind of vile imagination you could think of that goes on in any prison system. It's here, and it's alive, and it's well. And I think that even with the big human rights organizations, ACLU's done a lot on Red Onion too. Even with that attention,
I just wish that they were just more engaged. I guess sometimes I be hearing like the way that they have the outrage in regards to certain political topics at the moment, and for instance, the separation of children from the parents at the border. Well, millions of our incarcerated Americans are separated from their children for slow death sentences. And yet there's not one person speaking about it on CNN or Fox or any of these organizations. So it makes you think, like, do we not matter to our own people?
And the cheeks have been turned way too long. If I could just pause, I definitely want to give credit where credit is due real quick for anybody that's listening and interested in reaching out and supporting Virginia. A Warrior Within Us, Virginia Justice Alliance, Unlock the Box, which is a solitary confinement movement, and what's the other one? I'm sorry, IAHR, which is the Interfaith Action for Human Rights. Natasha White does a lot of, she focuses on in solitary confinement, and she has been spearheading the Red Onion crisis. And she's an incredible leader, and she's willing to talk to anybody who has a story to share about Red Onion or any solitary confinement matter for that, as far as that goes. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
shout out everybody. They need to shine. They need the credibility and power to, bring this war to the corrupt politicians that have perpetuated this war against our own people. This crime war that they declared against our people is the reason why we're at this stage today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely.
It's systemic genocide, and we can prove it. Whether that's the CPS family court foster care end, the school to prison pipeline, the neglected neurodivergency, or what's going on in our prisons when those kids that were labeled bad. They're there.
That one just gave me chills when you just said that. The foster care. I mean, I don't know. You don't know my story, but I was in foster care, and 90% of foster children end up in prison. And so that one is one close to my heart. And I constantly see people in here that are straight from foster care, and it just reminds me exactly what happened to me and to millions of our foster children across the country. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And you also said the school to prison pipeline?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's where I believe it starts. We aren't addressing the trauma that our children are going through, so therefore we are not meeting the United Nations requirement for equal education, because you can't be in fight or flight and survival mode and learn and absorb. So you might have somebody who has what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's like the basics that we need to be self-actualized and to be successful and be able to have that executive function to adult. And people who are neurodivergent, it literally was just updated in the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual for mental health. The knowledge that we have now, we actually had it before, we just didn't want to talk about it as much, because neurodivergency, we're the majority. We all either have ADHD, OCD, some of us are odd HD, some of us are autistic, and we're all on this spectrum. And when we have boxed education and we say, okay, it doesn't matter if your family's homeless, it doesn't matter if you're being abused and neglected at home, or maybe you're going hungry, or maybe you don't have clothes, or whatever the case may be, or maybe you're in foster care and feeling so neglected by every sector that was supposed to protect you. You can't learn. So therefore,
exactly. The only way you feel any kind of attention is when you act out, and so therefore we find at an early age that if I want to feel loved or even cared about in any fashion, I need to act out. I need to be, run away. I need to live on the streets or do whatnot. And absolutely, Melissa,
for any kind of attention. Yeah, for any kind of attention, because that's what our children need. They need comfort. They need touch, healthy touch and love unconditionally, and they need supported in neurodivergency especially. And that's the thing that started the oppression, right? The left-brained box curriculum. What's the thing with ADHD? If we're not interested in it, if it's not connected to our God-given purpose, we don't focus on it, especially if we're going through adverse childhood experiences or adult experiences of the same. But when we focus on stuff that we're passionate about and we study about because we're so interested, we succeed. And they didn't like that, right? So what was it? It was the Rockefellers or Rothschilds or whatever that created that education system. But either way, they knew what they were doing, because they knew that we could label bad children instead of realizing and promoting that all behavior is a form of communication. There are things that we can do that are little cost: mindfulness, emotional regulation, having trauma support, and those assessments to find out if we need IEPs, so we can have people be at least support as much as possible to even go to middle school or high school or, God forbid, college or something like that. But most often what happens is we end up having people who have to self-soothe because they're unmedicated or unsupported, underdiagnosed, not diagnosed. And some people even have a hard time admitting that they're struggling, right? Especially if nobody listened your whole life anyway. And then we put you in juvie, or not even, while you're still in elementary school. Nowadays, we're isolating you, which we know is negative. and how that resembles, further down to the prison system. They say now that, and solitary confinement was a replacement originally introduced for carnal punishment, or corporal punishment, sorry. And what ended up happening, now we know, neurologically, if we put you in extended for 14 days solitary confinement, we are literally doing the equivalent of cutting off 20% of your limb. Mm-hmm. And if people really understood that, because people haven't been like, oh, how long did it take us to even care about mental health or then our veterans' PTSD? And now we're trying to be like, okay, not just mental health and PTSD, but neurodivergency. Because when you're neurodivergent or you're autistic and somebody tries to control you, or you're hearing loud noises and overwhelmed, sometimes it's torture for others, you shut down. You go into survival mode. And so for survival mode, you don't even have that frontal lobe activated telling you, okay, this is right or wrong, think about it before you act. That's not what survival mode is. Survival mode is, it's every man for himself right now. And that's a fact, and that's neuroscience, that's neuropsychology. So we can't deny it. We have behavioral analysis.
That's crazy you say that.
Right?
Yeah, because they actually, you touched on it a tad bit, but they actually did research on this where they studied people that went into solitary confinement, and within a small amount of time, whether it was, as you said, 14 days or whatnot, but it rewires the synapses in your brain because we're a social animal. And so you start becoming more mentally disordered due to that trauma of solitary. And it's funny you say that because, like you said, a limb, right, Melissa? So is your brain a part of your physical body?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're doing physical damage on our people. Everybody's like, oh, it's just mental. We're not. No, that's physical. That's physical damage to our brain and our. You know what I mean? So it's crazy, like you said, that they're getting away with this.
And the thing is that's even scarier is, even before this, but, back in the 60s, there was the first black federal judge in New York stood up and said, this is torture. We can't do this to our people. She freed a man, and what ended up happening is they overturned it and put him back in solitary. It's a big popular activist from back in the 60s, but we knew it. We did it anyway. And then we went to mass incarceration. We knew what slavery did to our people, right, mentally, that PTSD, that racism PTSD. Now we can at least show everybody, and it's legal slavery.
I am so in tune with what you're saying, Melissa. I love what you're saying. It's awesome to hear somebody so educated and to talk with somebody that's so understanding about what's truly happening. You're right. We have the biggest slave pass in human history today, and the news don't even freaking talk about it. It's like they're okay with talking about how bad slavery was pre-Civil War, but yet we have more slaves today than at any time in history, even during the Roman times. So why are you not speaking to that?
Exactly.
And they're like, we're not using physical whips and whatnot and chains. Yeah, they are using chains, and they're using psychological whips.
It's psychological warfare. It really is, because they know that we can be broken down, and then we're going to go out at reentry and end of sentence, and we're not going to be able to get on our feet because we have to have reacclimation and neural synapses rebuild time to even function. And we got guys that can't even, and it's not a dig on them, but they're not even in a space where they can call and make appointments, or know who to call and make appointments, or stand in line and not have hypervigilance kick in, or not be able to use, current technology and sit at a table and have somebody behind you, because you have to know your surroundings, your exit, your weapon, and everything, because you don't know what's going to happen. We are literally rewiring our people's minds and brains, and declining their mentality on purpose, because at recidivism, we bring you back, we make the difference between minimum wage and 25 cents an hour. The D.O.C. makes that in their pocket in every state. Then we force every government-funded agency to buy from the prison industrial system. We feed them out of boxes marked not for human consumption, let alone high in sodium, which we know that is also something that's based on racial, because you know what? African Americans are more sensitive to sodium, and they come out and they're not healthy. If they come out, if they make it out. Speaking to Red Onion, we had a guy, that's what we were talking about when you got cut off, is that in that movie, Up on the Ridge, or the documentary Up on the Ridge, one of the stories in there is of a young gentleman in his 20s, and he's diabetic, and he goes into, I guess, basically like diabetic shock or coma, right, because his sugars were not managed properly. And they ended up restraining him, delaying his care, literally finally getting him on the gurney, letting his arms flap off of it in the run to the infirmary, knowing that he's obviously dead. That's when they started the paddles and the compression. He had died. And when they sent his body away for autopsy, it came back not in a body bag. It came back not even sewn up. You could see the flesh of his inside in the pictures. And he died because there wasn't help for diabetes. We've got people in there geriatric. We got people in there that cancer. We got people in there with mental illness that's not being treated. You know, people who aren't getting their medication and treatment. And that kind of neglect, we did that in slave times, right? We didn't take care of mental health. We basically feed you, you know, like slaves too. And then we did the prison, the interstate. Red Onion was getting people from Connecticut, which, funny, the story out of Connecticut in an article is that red onion, the vegetable, was only successful due to slavery. And it's just, where else did we get the name? Where else did we get the name, right?
Oh,
and we're in Southwest Virginia, same place that the retributive justice, same place with the same white supremacy. And the people in the town even talk about it. And now, since they've been opened, their own town is going to demise because the corrections officers are getting different PTSDs and narcissistic behaviors and going home. And, you know, there's a domestic violence increase, substance abuse increase, and divorce increase ever since Red Onion. So they're not helping everybody. It was guised as a replacement to the coal industry. And we have people in there. Like, there's one guy who's labeled Mountain Monster and joked about, we have a text message from one of the COs there, and he was joking about how these two COs from Red Onion were known as Mountain Monsters, and the inmates fear them, and their first week on the job, they got, half a dozen excessive force. But they're still working. And then one of these same gentlemen, who's only been with the D.O.C. for 3 years, whose job history on LinkedIn is Little Caesars, and somehow, even though Red Onion correctional officer pay starts around $25,000 to $30,000 a year, which is kind of an atrocity in itself, but either way, even though that's the case, last year, his third year with Red Onion, somehow he made, while still working 2 jobs according to LinkedIn, he made over $100,000, and $35,000 of that was considered overtime, and he would have been having to work. It would have been possible, Mm-hmm. So when you add up all the little pieces,
that's corrupt.
You can't deny it. And the fact that we don't put these pieces together, it's all in black and white. They've literally counted on our stupidity and the fact that we have let the D.O.C. investigate the D.O.C. So when we get PREA complaints, we tell you it doesn't matter if you were victimized, which if we did that outside, it would be all over the news. You can't tell a sexual assault victim.
That's what I tell people all the time, Melissa. When I talk to my family and my friends and stuff, I tell them that it feels like I'm in a foreign land or something. Because like on the street, you get into a fist fight, a stabbing, a rape, or a guard brutality, like any of these things. It's like a big front page thing. But it happened in prison, and all of a sudden it's like it's not even a big deal. Like these things just happen all natural. And it's because the prison administration is in control of scarce resources, so everybody's fighting over a pull-up bar, everybody's fighting over a dip bar, everybody's fighting over a commissary, and they're the ones in control of all of this stuff. So
exactly.
It's like, you're right. It's corrupt.
And the thing is I compare it to a combat battlefield. And I know some people get offended at that, some veterans do, but if you really break it down and
I think you're 100% right.
It's a war.
we're crime war veterans, and if people get offended by that, then I can't wait they're not gonna like the way that I speak when I get out of here, whether that's in 14 years or whatnot. But there is a real crime war happening against our people, and it's a corrupt one. It's not a fair fight. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, not in any state, no judicial system. Like, for example, here in Southwest Virginia, it's so corrupt. Culpeper, if anybody searches Culpeper, Virginia. Now, mind you, this is the Southwest. This is where our Civil War, really ensued. And you can connect the dots so blatantly that tie the slavery into it because our supermaxes, they're in the country. We have a lot of our facilities are in the country where our slavery was most prominent, where those families still reside, where they grew up in racism. Maybe they don't want to be a racist asshole. Excuse my language, but that's how they were brought up. And I know some people like that, and I keep them at a distance, because I don't have a lot of respect for that. I grew up in Northern Virginia where we didn't see color. We were so integrated and mixed communities, and that's the thing is you can't look at. And then I don't know if y'all saw or if I mentioned it, but just so first off, so the crisis is going on right now. So we had somebody burn themselves, set themselves on fire last year. That gentleman.
Oh yeah, tell us about that. Tell us what happened and what everything unfolded. Yes.
So like the immediate thing right now, so last May, DeAndre Gordon, he started a fire in his cell and he caused 3-degree burns to his leg. It didn't get a lot of media or attention, and we've had unalivings not get any attention, so it wasn't a surprise. But then this year, so back in August, Demetrius Wallace, just 27, he set fire to his leg to force a transfer because of the racism and inhumane conditions. So he was self-harming. And then soon after, it was September 15th, or around September 15th, Ekong Ishite, I think it's pronounced. Everybody has been pronouncing it differently, but that's another tragedy, is because one of his complaints is they always call him eat shit, and they called him monkey, and they damaged his Quran, and he ended up setting himself on fire or self-harming. We'll say self-harming, but they set themselves on fire. If there was flame, they set themselves on fire. And the D.O.C., we took, and then what ended up happening, and it wasn't Ekong, it was the one before him, he was seen by a nurse on Friday. He was not taken to the VCU burn unit until Monday. And the doctor, when seeing the injury, asked the facility resident if why didn't he get there sooner, and he kind of jokingly said it's not as if he had control of that. They pulled in the guard that was with him and demanded they tell the warden that he can't even be treated for the wound yet. He has to be on antibiotics to kill the infection that's now set in. So he spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering. And mind you, we're in the know now. We're already. It was released by Kevin Rashid Johnson, is a known activist. He's even on Wikipedia. There's tons of stories about him. Earlier this year, he went on a 72-day hunger strike, and he almost died. And they tried to force feed him, and then they retaliated against him, further isolating him. And that same activist, who's been so powerful for our people behind bars, that he ended up trying to elevate the situation, because it was then reported that between 10 and 12 African American or Black men set themselves on fire. What ended up happening at this point, and I did a couple podcasts, we were all sharing stories and everything going on, and the truth is people turn their cheek. They're too busy, and that's what the system likes. We keep you too busy to fight for your right. And then we tell you, they're in a supermax, so they're the worst of the worst. But the truth is that we send people there on drug charges, non-violent drug charges. We send to a supermax where you're basically 23 and 1. If you get your one, if you get your showers, And then we even, I don't know about in Washington, but they had even reduced our education options for those incarcerated. So we literally have...
They barely got it. They don't have barely any higher education. I mean, literally zero. They're trying to keep us as stupid as they possible, just like, they did pre-Civil War, to keep us recidivizing and coming back. And when you don't know nothing, you go back to what you know, and that's criminal activity. You can't disrupt that cycle unless you put new career paths in people's path. You know what I mean? And they know this. These are educated people, Melissa. These are people that go to college and learn criminology, and they understand that education is what disrupts the cycle of recidivism. So that's what is so outrageous. It's like politicians are just playing on the fact that the American people are asleep. You know what I mean? That they do not know that they are the ones that are perpetuating new crime every single day across this country because of the failure of the politicians and the prison administrators to implement actual, genuine, true treatment of root causes and careers. Those two things, boom, it would reduce recidivism all the way down to like 20% as like it is in Norway. You know what I mean? So you're 100% right. I mean, it's just we know what's happening. These people just need to be shook up, and people need to, hold them accountable. It's like they have no problem telling us working class, us poor class, us middle class, that we need to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. When is the D.O.C. going to be held accountable for their corruption?
Exactly, and that's the thing. That's what a lot of people don't realize is generally across the nation, not only is it lack of accountability, but it's like lack of give a damn because your local jails are literally individually, generally, not every single one, but literally in Virginia and many other states, it's their own free-for-all. They can do whatever they want. Now, there is FOIA, and we're supposed to be able to get some information, but the insurance of that and accountability to that isn't always 100%, ever, actually. We have to fight for studies and go into legislation with created bills, with one of my coalitions is doing now, to just be able to go in and study how bad solitary and other matters are in local jails. But then you got the regular state prison, and they also investigate themselves. They also, and that's the thing I was speaking to about, like, the SA, we are literally writing in record that we have thousands, in the Virginia D.O.C., we have thousands of PREA reports and literally single digits, or I'm sorry, it actually may be low double digits, like in the 20s, I think, of actual, actual like confirmed assaults or harassment, or unwanted touch, whatever the case may be. And to have somebody, first off, it just doesn't make sense. We couldn't have that conflict of interest outside, right? We can't, in not any sector, not in banking, not in school, technically not in the courtroom, but that's bullshit too, because they're all the same team. They're often family members of the same people who work in D.O.C. When they do crimes, we had the sheriff department in Culpeper unalive a woman because they were drinking and driving, and her punishment was just going to work at the courthouse. They have our arms, our guns were found in Texas, with no documentation. We have arms dealings and CIA corruption. It's that deep. It's disgusting. And the problem is the system knows. The system planned it this way. And then we have too many people out here turning cheek, or you get people who just, they're defeated. They either don't have the capacity or maybe they tried to fight, and it's so vile, they know they don't fucking let you win. Excuse my language, I'm so sorry. They don't let you win. The civil rights judge that was hearing those cases is now the director of D.O.C.
I find that to be repulsive. You're right, absolutely. People are just so busy watching, the next TV show or football game, and worried about the next Nike Air Maxes that coming out, instead of thinking about the people that are suffering, that are probably out there making the Christmas gifts that are going to be under the Christmas tree for slave labor, and people are just oblivious that this is happening right here in this country, and not knowing that the biggest civil rights struggle that we're facing in this country today is mass incarceration, and people don't even want to, pay attention to it.
It's the demise of society. It is society's downfall because it's too much of a system of neglect. It's too much of a system of break you down. And if we don't have education, and then our reentry programs are, one of them I heard at one of the facilities was we had to get up every day and speak one word and its definition, and that was our reentry program. Like, for real. And then you get released. There's not a lot of stipend. Some states do $50, some do $200, some do none. But then you have to have a home plan. Well, if you've been away from society for 20 years, 10 years, maybe you don't have that. Maybe you never did have that. And to expect you to mistreat and abuse and neglect what's inside and expect that post-incarceration syndrome is not going to impact everybody and their families and our neighbors, everybody. That's what turns me to rights of the incarcerated. I've been an advocate since 1988. I was a junior advocate. I was an advocate before it affected me. And that's
wow.
That's
I applaud
the problem.
you. I thank you so much. I thank you so much for your service. You're doing a true public service, what you're speaking on and how educated you are and how passionate you are. It really rings home. And I'm just, man, from my heart and all the hearts of prisoners across the country, man, we thank you, and we need so many more like you on the front line, because honestly, that's the front line. We're in here because there's no control. But you guys are on the front line where you guys are going to be able to get right up in their faces and have the freedom of speech where they can't overpower you with solitary confinement and all the psychological torture they can do to you. And so you're able to be our hands, our feet, and our mouthpiece. And so thank you so much for that, Melissa, and all the advocates listening today. Thank you so much for your service. It's a public service.
And we appreciate that, and we want everybody inside to know that there are us out here doing that, because some people don't realize that anybody gives a damn, and we do. There's a lot of us, and we're recruiting, and we're doing public education steering committee. That's another group through the Unionization Project of Virginia. We're bringing the awareness. We're bringing it radically. The D.O.C. responded with a very gaslighting, horrible response on their page. After they shared their racial humiliation device at their festival labeled Chicken Thief, they did pull that down quickly. But their response was bullshit. It was lies. It was blatant lies. And the thing is, it's not just that we care about, those that are confined there, but these COs too. We care about humanity. We're asking for humility. We're asking for human rights to matter.
Just on a side note, do you know when D.O.C. was enacted in Virginia?
Oh, well, official D.O.C., though I've read the timeline, I know it was before the war, because it was before Vietnam War, because I know Vietnam actually combined the military-industrial complex and the prison-industrial complex for a nice basic slave labor mixed with our arms and war in the 70s. And I'm not sure exactly when it started.
Because it was enacted in Washington in 1981. And so, whenever I bring on activists, I always like to ask if they know, because that's something that is a real powerful piece of information for people to understand that this is a relatively new project that the corrupt prison industrial complex created, and it needs to be disrupted. You know what I mean? People think that it's always been here since the beginning of the American colony or something, but in reality, it's only been here for 50 years, 60 years, and it's time to get rid of it.
Yeah, the official structure of the D.O.C., the way it became a non-rehabilitative, there on the timeline, and you can search it online, on the timeline of the U.S. D.O.C., there's it's like a 4-year window, much like presidency, where it was considered a rehabilitative D.O.C., where there was more support and more opportunity, and we've just gone downhill from there. When they realized that we didn't pay attention to the African American or the Native American injustices, it just started slowly but surely impacting every race, socioeconomic class, that it could, because it was all about money. And prison industrial complex is, equates to post-incarceration syndrome. PICS equals PICS. And people need to understand it's a multi-billion-dollar agency. One county in Virginia in 1 year profited $80,000 just in communications alone. Just in communications. Yeah. And that's a billionaire mogul out of California that owns that.
Yeah, they're extracting that money from our people, and it's just repulsive. And just so you know, like, you are on the right side of history, Melissa, and everybody that's out there, activists or those that just participate through listening. Those, you are on the right side of history, because there's going to be a time, I promise you, and I give my word on this. Whether it's 50 years, 100 years, there's going to be a time when our people are going to look back and look at this time today and think that it is up there with slavery and Jim Crow. I promise you.
Yep, absolutely. And there's so many of us rising, and that's what Warrior Within is about too, is that connecting a hub. Every one of us should be hubs. Every one of us should be like, you know what, I can resource you here. I can send you this direction. We still have some that are competitive, and there's no room for that really, but it's everywhere.
I want to get everybody. I want to put everybody on this platform that can help the movement. It's not about money. It's not like we're giving away everything. We're coming out of our own pocket to platform all this, and it's not about money. It's about our people. You're right. Let's get on each other's shoulders.
That's right. We rise together. And really, if we all did it, if people stopped letting labels divide us and money divide us, we literally could be the majority. We really could, interrupt some shit if we just stood in place. A lot of the, I don't know if you heard about and I know we're about to wrap it up, but I don't know if you've heard about, I think it's the jailhouse lawyers, I believe, that have,
yeah,
I think
I'm a member of it. I'm a member of both the National Lawyers Guild. I'm a jailhouse lawyer member of the National Lawyers Guild and a jailhouse member of the National Jailhouse Lawyers Initiative.
Oh, incredible. Because I know, they even are trying to think of their own protests, to just shut it down inside. It did work for a couple states when they did it, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. But at the same time, then you still got to worry about the retaliation. And then you got people influencing others. Oh, you're going to not work today. It becomes an inmate thing, because I don't like saying that word. It becomes a facility resident thing. And we don't want that either. The retaliation is another major impactful thing. We've had people pulled out of their jobs because activists are trying to help them. Pulled out of their jobs, relocated.
No, I was just going to say, trust me, I know about retaliation. I'm literally in civil rights litigation right now against this place. It's vicious. When you exercise protected activities that's provided under U.S. Constitution, it's like you're an enemy of the state immediately, and they just retaliate against you so viciously.
They do, and then they even, they'll deny you, and then they'll deny your appeal, and they know what they're doing. And I commend you for doing that, because that takes a lot of capacity and strength to go up against that.
We just got to win. We just got to win. We just got a W. So we did a PRP and got the bogus infraction overturned, and then we went back to the federal court and got the civil rights lawsuit reopened, and then we got the judge and the federal judge to grant appointment of counsel.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's movement.
Yeah.
That's movement.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
And the thing is, that's hard. It takes a lot of time to do time and effort work, that type of stuff,
Oh, big time and effort. And then, the small, not even small, but small to some, huge to the inside, when you get that letdown, when you've worked so hard, when you know you're righteous, when you know that your Constitution is supposed to protect you, and then they don't. And I believe
particularly
it.
when you lose because of prejudice.
Yes.
Yes, particularly
absolutely.
when you lose because of prejudice. That's so ugly.
It is. It really is.
Well, Melissa, you're an awesome guest, and like you said earlier, we want you to come back and continue to update the even if you just hey, I want to just record a message.
I appreciate y'all too. Thank you so much for having me. I
you.
look forward to talking again.
Absolutely.
And please do another shout out for all those groups that you were just speaking on. I want to thank those groups that you just spoke on earlier.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to support Virginia D.O.C. or Rise Together and needs help with advocacy, we are stronger together. A Warrior Within Us on Facebook is facebook.com/4social change, the number 4 social change. Then you've got Virginia Justice Alliance. Then you've got the End Solitary Confinement Coalition, state and local, and everybody has Facebook pages. We've got the Public Education Steering Committee, which is part of the Humanization Project. Both of those have presence online. Some have TikToks as well and Instagram. Virginia D.O.C. website, I encourage you to follow their posts. Sometimes we'll have some active threads, and we like to keep those algorithms up for awareness. So reach out to any of us. IHR, Interfaith Action for Human Rights, Natasha White. She's incredible, and she's willing to hear from anybody with Red Onion or Wallens Ridge concerns. So thank you, everybody. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you for joining us, Melissa.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a good night.
Hey, friends, another episode is over. We want to keep improving this podcast, so we need your suggestions for future episodes. Also, as you know, I have been in prison almost 20 years, so if you have any questions about the criminal justice system, feel free to ask, and I will try to answer it. Please email your suggestions or questions on our website. Do you have a social media community that you can share our posts with? Please join our social media platforms and share our posts. That really helps. Also, I know you are busy, but taking one moment to do a review would help us tremendously. Thank you all.
Start the long and forgotten, threw away the key. Gone and forgotten, they forgot about me. Long and forgotten, threw away the key. Gone and forgotten, defund D.O.C. If I was you, I'd be asking for a refund. Everything they do for D.O.C. they need to defund. Lazy guards, double cells, everything in here is hell. You ever been to the county jail praying that you get some mail? Then you hit receiving all the stories, can't believe them. I thank God that I'm alive, I thank God that I'm still breathing. After COVID, wearing masks, everyone's sad. How did a virus know a budget? It really makes me laugh. We had good times, bad times, but still it made us strong. It was hard to be accountable, I had to right my wrongs. But now I'm long and forgotten, they forgot about me.